How's everybody doing? Thanks for joining. So let me know in the chat that you're here and let me know where you're watching from. Hey, thanks for joining. Hey, also let me know if you've been to one of my webinars before, or if you're new, or if this is the first webinar you've been to. I'm gonna get my PowerPoint set up. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for coming back. If you've been here before. I'm going to be talking about Instagram, as you know, which is a great topic, relevant topic, and one of my favorite topics, truly, even though I'm sure a lot of you are frustrated by the platform. Okay, let me start my screen sharing here. I've been doing a lot of webinars with somebody else, having somebody else with me, and those are different. Okay. And no matter how many times I use Zoom, it takes me a minute to figure out screen sharing and all of those things. So, okay. Awesome. Thanks to everyone who's joining. Lots of Asheville, North Carolina people watching. That's where I'm from too. That's where I'm at right now. Thanks so much. And so I'll be answering questions at the end and throughout. So feel free to leave questions in the question box or in the chat. If you don't know me, I'm Liz. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, as I said. I'd love to know if you kind of just found me for this webinar, how you found me. That would be great to know. I've worked in digital marketing since 2008. My first position in the jewelry industry was the marketing manager for Todd Reed, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with Todd Reed. He's an incredible artist out of Boulder, Colorado. And yeah, so since then, since I've been since I worked with Todd Reed, I left in 2016. I've done a lot of work in the industry for trade shows and other areas, sales, lots of different things, but I've always loved digital marketing. So since 2016, I've really helped hundreds of designers make their way in the jewelry industry. And it's something I love to do. I love supporting emerging designers. And so many people found me from the Halstead webinar that I did last week, and that was a super fun one. Thanks for joining me here too. This will be a nice follow-up to that chat. And also if you came to my webinar in September, I think it was, or I think it was September, but anyway, it was kind of like about how to sell on Instagram. This is kind of a nice follow-up to that. And if you haven't watched that one but want to, shoot me a DM or an email after this and I will get you the link for that. So anyway, thanks for being here. Instagram has changed so much this year, right? Let me know kind of what your frustrations have been with it. I would say the most frustrating thing for me has been just kind of them moving everything around so that I had to learn how to post, how to, do all the things. Yesterday, I did a live with Kathleen Cutler and I was just lost at how to go live, which, as somebody who's teaching you about Instagram is maybe not something I should be sharing, but I hadn't done a live in a while and everything was in a new place. So I'm excited to talk about this topic because actually Instagram in 2021 and Instagram as it's changed over the past year has actually become much more similar to why I fell in love with social media. Which is like connection and sharing your story and kind of all that great authentic engagement. And you don't have to play games to have success on Instagram. And actually, this is something I'm sure everybody's going to be really excited to hear. You don't have to post as much. So I think that's great news for a lot of people as well. So let's dive in and take a look at what's changed. So now, Instagram has 5 different places that you can share your content. So it's kind of, there's so much you can create. So it's kind of figuring out where you have the best reach and what feels good for you, what feels good for telling your brand story. So we have the feed, which has been there all along for us. You want to think about this as a secondary website, and these are static posts. So these are posts that don't go away. They live right on your profile, easy to find. It's kind of the core of what Instagram is and how it started. And then we have stories, which everyone should be pretty familiar with. They're photos and 15-second videos, and they appear together in a slideshow format, and they live for 24 hours. And if you want your stories to live longer, then you can put them in highlights, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And yes, I will share the link to this PowerPoint to everybody who has registered. You'll get an email with the replay and then this PowerPoint. Anyway, so don't feel like you have to take a ton of notes. I'll send you the replay and the PowerPoint. And then there's Instagram Live, which is a live broadcast that can be up to 4 hours actually. And these can be saved to Igtv. So yesterday I did a live for the first time in a while, since probably the beginning of the pandemic. And I saved it to my Igtv, and Igtv lives kind of in its own space, but I shared a preview on my feed. So this is kind of, so anybody who's kind of visual, Instagram switched up where things are. So you have your feed, you have your IGTV. So if you clicked here on my profile, you'd see all the IGTV videos I've done in the past. And then Reels. So all of your Reels, or maybe this is Reels and this is IGTV, sorry about that. Your Reels kind of live in a separate place than your feed, but you can share previews to your feed. And then this icon hasn't changed. It's just tagged photos of you that you've approved. So then we have IGTV, which is pre-recorded videos. They can be 15 seconds to 10 minutes if you're just uploading a video to the platform. If you're sharing a live video to IGTV, it can be up to an hour. So in a preview, you can share that in your feed to get more views and more traction there. And then Reels is the newest portion of the platform that is said to have, you know, a ton of benefits to posting because Instagram is prioritizing that content. And they actually changed, let me make sure you can see this here. They actually changed your whole kind of navigation system on Instagram so that this middle button where you used to go to post is now Reels. So it takes you straight to Reels. So the views that people are getting on Reels might be a little bit inflated because of some of these changes, people accidentally clicking on it. But something else to consider is that, so Instagram changes the algorithm. They don't tell you what they're exactly doing, what exactly the algorithm, what they're taking into account, anything like that. So that's something to keep in mind. We're kind of just guessing here. And then also when they launched Reels, they didn't say what a view was. So when they launched IGTV a while ago, people were posting and getting tons and tons of views. Turns out a view was 3 seconds of your video. So a view could count as little as a second. We don't know what they're counting as views. So you could get a huge amount of views, but your content might not be necessarily making the waves or connecting with the audience the way you want it to. So some of these metrics, although views is important for engagement, some of these metrics are a little bit of a vanity number to get people to continue using things that the platform wants you to use, like Reels and IGTV. So Instagram loves that people are posting more video. They want you to keep posting more video, but you want to think about if that's actually working for you before you invest in that type of strategy. So that's changed on Instagram. It's kind of, there's a lot more things going on, a lot more places to post. Yeah, so there's a question in the question box saying when somebody watches the same reel again, does that count as a view? So the answer is we don't know. We're not sure what they're counting as views yet for Reels. My guess would be yes. That's how it goes on TikTok, I believe, and Reels is really just kind of a copy of TikTok. So yeah, we're not sure how people are getting kind of these huge views on Reels or what that means. Okay. So more about what's changed here on Instagram. The algorithm has changed so that some of the techniques you've been using to grow your following in the past and increase your engagement aren't working anymore. So a lot of the questions I get about Instagram and concerns I get is I don't know how to increase my followers. Actually, there's a couple of people in the chat saying smaller reach. They don't know how to grow their following. That's something I get a lot. People ask that a lot. So we just have to think about it differently. And I think some of the techniques I share and some of these things I talk about will help. But growing your following has definitely become more challenging because there's more people using the platform. And again, the algorithm changed. There's a lot going on here. So how to grow your following really kind of comes down to a couple of things. Shareable content. And this is encouraging people to share your content to increase your following. So the more people who see your content and putting it out there, so doing a post for yourself, for your own following, doesn't necessarily get the same kind of traction as it used to get. And that can be super frustrating. But what you can do to remedy this is to think about shareable content. Shareable content is so huge. For example, last week I did a chat with Halstead, and I encourage everybody watching to, post about it or shoot me a DM after. And it was awesome. I got so much engagement and people talking about me. And because of that, I gained 150 followers, which is a pretty big growth at this point. I think that we're very used to when we started our platforms back in the day. I started Todd Reed's platform, for example, in 2012. We're very used to kind of being able to grow organically. I was able to grow Todd's Instagram to 100,000 followers without any paid content or sponsored posts or anything like that, just by posting great content, posting, his process, sharing beautiful photos, sharing great captions. And it's very different now. And actually we are I'll get into this, but we're going to want to think smaller to actually scale our businesses at this point. My account too, I started Instagram when Instagram was born. Whenever that was. I forget exactly when that was born. But anyway, I started then. So if you're looking at me and you're like, how do you have 20,000 followers? It's all because of when I started. I would say a lot of them are ghost followers now, which is something I'm pretty transparent about, which is why I've never considered doing any kind of sponsored post or having anybody pay me to post or anything like that, because I'm very aware that in terms of the number of followers actually engaging with me, it's probably around maybe 5,000. So this follower count doesn't matter. We want real people following us, of course, so growing our following is important, but kind of really stressing over big growth isn't going to help us at this point. So shareable content, something to consider. I mean, you've seen quotes flying around, like beautifully graphically designed quotes. That's always a great option. Think about why that ties back to your brand when you're doing something like that and explain it in the caption. But Canva is a great resource if you're trying to create graphic content and to encourage shares and things like that. Really thoughtful captions that people can engage with. Sometimes that leads to shares, especially if you're telling like a really personal story that somebody can relate to. Relevant images, client photos are a great way to encourage sharing too. User-generated content is something that I'll talk about a little bit later too, but these are some of the things that people will share. So brainstorming kind of what types of posts you could put out there that will encourage sharing, and then also having a strong call to action to get people to share that content. So say, we're headed into February, you're sharing a beautiful photo of an amethyst piece, encourage someone to share that with a friend who has a February birthday. So that's something you can think about too. So sharing doesn't necessarily have to be somebody sharing to their stories. It can be simple as sharing to a friend. I have friends that I share memes with all day. That's really how we communicate. And that's why some of those meme accounts are so large, because we're constantly sharing these memes and things like that. And then I thought it was Amanda Gordon who spoke at the inauguration. I watched her following go from, I think it was 600,000 up to 2.1 million because so many people were posting about her and tagging her. So that's a great way to grow in a great way. So think about sharing. And then savable content is another great thing. And everybody's kind of been focused on saves. We know that the Instagram algorithm likes this, they essentially view a save as an indicator that the post is good, and then they want to show it to more people. It also means that somebody's planning to come back to this post in the future to maybe share it, or think about this piece that they want to buy. So saves are great too, and you can encourage this. For example, have you been thinking about a custom piece? Here's the process. Let me tell you about the process, and save this post to come back to if you ever want to pursue a custom project. So you could think about it in those terms too, but make sure you have that call to action to encourage people to save, and tell them why they should save it. When you're doing calls to action in general, make sure you're giving people a reason and not just telling them what to do. Yeah, so moving on. So I wanted to show you, and I think everybody should do this. It's a great practice. Sorry, quick, I'm just taking a look at the questions here. One of them is, what are your thoughts on removing ghost followers from Instagram accounts to increase engagement? I think as you're getting followers who don't seem real, or are gem dealers, or are people that you just don't necessarily want following you, I would remove those followers. I've gone back and removed a lot of followers, ghost followers. It takes a long time. So it's not necessarily worth investing a ton of time into, but it's totally fine if you're getting a ton of, I hear all the time from jewelry designers, like, endless gem dealers are following me. Like, just remove them, you know what I mean? So they're not just kind of inflating your following and not adding to your engagement. So I'm totally on board with that. Yeah, and then another question that came in while I was chatting was wondering what to do with gem dealers that follow you. Totally remove them. If you want, you can block them. If they're not engaging with your content, there's not necessarily a reason to keep them around. Also, we know that they're not going to buy your jewelry probably. So we really want to focus on growing a following that has people who are going to purchase our product. And, I'm sure a lot of you have different price ranges of what you're selling. But if you're in kind of a higher end fine category, we don't need as many people following us. We just need the right people following us. So this is a practice I want everybody to do. I want you to go to your insights, which if you have a business account, you can access your insights. If you don't have a business account, I encourage you to upgrade to a business account and change your profile to a business account versus just having it personal, because you have access to insights. And these analytics that they show are really helpful to kind of help look at what you're doing and what's working and how to move forward. So this is a look at my past year in terms of shares and in terms of saves. So like this post, the top shared post of the year is one that has a lot of different designers in it. So I'm sure all of those designers share this post to their stories. And then it also was a raffle that I was running to raise money for Crafting the Future. So I'm sure a lot of people were helping get the word out by sharing it. So some of these other posts that were shared a lot, I was actually a little surprised by. You could have a product photo, and in this ring photo, I'm not saying anything different than that this ring's by Anthony Lent. I forget what the exact caption is, but product photos can be shared. If somebody loves the work that you're putting out there and they want to send it to a friend, that's stuff that can be shared. So we don't need to necessarily go the route of doing these like quotes or like fun graphics or anything like that. You just want to kind of encourage people to share to get it going. And then this is my saves over the past year. And you can look at this in a 3-month increment, a 6-month increment, a year, 2 years. And I think it's a good thing for everyone to look at, so you can kind of get an idea of what people have been sharing and saving, so you know what kind of content to create more of. So for the people who aren't sure how to get here, if you go into your insights, I always have to do this for myself too, and there's 3 lines, you get into your insights, and then if you go to the content you shared, which is about 3/4 of the way, about halfway down the screen, and then you click into that, where you're looking more directly into the posts that you've been sharing. That's how you get to this. And then you can toggle it by year, and then you can switch it by what metric you're sorting the post by. So you can look at what posts drove people to your website. You can look at posts by reach. You can look at posts by likes. So there's a lot of great content in there that I encourage you to take a look at. So what do the saves actually mean? That means somebody's flagging this post to come back to. And again, what it's telling Instagram is that you're creating content that people are interested in. And how you share on Instagram, which is another question that just came through, is there's this like little paper airplane looking thing at the bottom of every post that you do that is your share. And then the save is the little flag icon. So I guess I should have taken a screenshot of that for you guys to see. And then a question that just came through in the chat is giveaways haven't been successful as my reach is so small. And the whole point is to gain followers and increase engagement. Is there a tip you can share? So if you're doing a giveaway, you really want to talk about it. And even if you're doing a sale too, if you're doing any kind of promotion with your brand or any kind of event or anything like that, you want to talk about it. And one of the things you could do for a form of entry is to share this post to your stories for a way to enter. So that'll kind of start having more people see where see this content, see that you're doing a giveaway. This could also be a good time to kind of send it to industry press or send it to industry influencers, or even think outside the industry. I'm not a huge fan of influencers or micro influencers in general, because I don't think that it often leads to sales, but to get some eyes on what you're doing, that could be a good strategy. But in general, I think about what you're asking people to do to enter the giveaway. Is it just tagging 3 friends? Is it sharing your post? Is it signing up for your email list? Giveaways honestly haven't been the best strategy in the past probably 6 months to grow a following, because also something to consider with giveaways is that you might get people who follow you until you announce the winner and then leave. So it's more important to kind of think long term. There's no quick fix with this. There's no quick way to grow a following or increase your engagement. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. If you're looking to get to share or save insights, which it looks like some people are still struggling with that, again, it's you're looking at your posts, all of your posts on your insight page. There's a section called content you shared and a little arrow that you can click, and then it'll take you to all your posts sorted by reach. And then you can sort it in this middle button by shares and by saves. And then if you're looking at an individual post on your feed, you can view insights on that. And then if you swipe that up, it shows you more insights about how many people saved your content and how many people shared your content. Actually, you don't have to swipe up to see that. So it should be right there. So if you go to any of your posts and click view insights, it'll show you how many people shared or saved. Okay. So moving on. Still kind of, okay, so what's changed? You want to personalize. A beautifully curated feed is with like generic stock photos or just like really pretty photos that you're kind of doing in a specific grid doesn't work anymore. So what sets your brand apart? Share more context and relatable content. So you want to connect with your audience. You want to talk to them. You don't want to just put content out, push content out at them. You kind of want to invite them into your world. So a lot of people ask, like, do I have to share my personal life? No, you don't have to share your personal life or anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. But it means that your content should be more casual and conversational, and avoid generic marketing to the masses and speak directly to your client. And I'll talk about captions a little bit later, but you want to think about how you can relate to your audience and pull people in. So a question in the chat, going back to insights, is, are times to post still valuable, or should you base it on your insight times? So you can try. I think it's important to kind of experiment with time of day to post, because you do want to post when your audience is online. Although feed posts do last longer, obviously stories are out for 24 hours. Feed posts kind of live a bit longer than they used to. It used to be that the first 10 minutes you put a post up, it was that how many likes you got was crucial for the success of a post. It's not like that anymore. So time of day posting isn't as important. I would say consistency is more important. So think about when is best for you to be posting first and foremost. And then if you are flexible and can choose kind of any time to post, then look at your insights, look at when most of your audience is online. That will be something you find in your insights. And start with those times. And if those times don't work, then kind of experiment. For my clients, what seems to work best is 9 a.m. Eastern time, or like, you know, around that time before noon Eastern time on weekdays, and then weekends are kind of anything goes. But try it out and see kind of what works best, but I wouldn't stress too hard about times to post. I would think more about the content you're putting out there, how you're putting it out there, what you're saying, and making sure your messaging is super clear, which I'll get to in a little bit, but that's more crucial than worrying about times. So anyway, so we want to personalize what we're putting out there. So we don't want to just put jewelry out there. If we're a maker, we want to share the process. Tara, who just asked a question about times, posting at times, like she uses these really cool skateboards, skateboard decks to create jewelry. So showing that like inspiration and that side of the story and kind of how she chooses the color and things like that. That's awesome context to be adding. That isn't personal. It isn't showing her dinner or her partner or her kids, but it is showcasing more context, sharing more story. So when I first started in creating an Instagram for Todd Reed, my focus was storytelling. How do I tell Todd's story? And I think that we've kind of lost that, kind of getting stuck with vanity metrics and, you know, bigger numbers and big growth and things like this. But what we really want to be doing is telling our story and doing so in a way that's like inviting people into our world. And a lot of times when people get stuck, you know, with what to say or how to say it, think about how you explain your brand to somebody who's walking up to you at a craft show or an event, or, you know, think about how you can kind of translate how you are in person, how you share that in person to the online, and be conversational, like write like you talk. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have this like PowerPoint all done, so I like stick to it, but I love answering questions too. So anyway, thanks for staying with me here. A question from Jennifer about hashtags. Are they pointless is what Jennifer is saying. And I think that in a lot of cases they are. You can have a strong hashtag strategy. It takes work. All of this takes work. It used to be that you could just post on Instagram, and since less people were using the platform to sell and to grow a business, it was more effective. And also the way the algorithm was in the past, because there were less factors at play, hashtags were very effective. They used to be a super effective way to grow your following. Not anymore. So I think that hashtags are great when you're using a branded hashtag. So you're doing one specific for your brand, you're hashtagging your brand name, and then you're digging into kind of this next point on the slide here too, your niche. Really leaning into niche hashtags, and think about it more so than what is in the picture, like describing what's in the picture, such as like fine jewelry or 18 karat gold, or whatever it is, earrings. Think about what somebody might be searching. So think about using hashtags that connect with your ideal client. So like say you're selling to self-purchasing powerful women. So like maybe empowered women is a good hashtag for you. So think about it more from that lens versus, you know, describing what's actually in the picture, because that's where you get to a point where you get a lot of industry people following you and you get a lot of gem dealers following you. And it doesn't matter where you post your hashtag. So if you are taking on a hashtag strategy, It doesn't matter. Sorry, the light is coming in all crazy. I usually do these at 4 p.m. So I don't know. Anyway, so it doesn't matter if you post your hashtags in your comments or in the description of the post. That doesn't affect anything. So just kind of what you visually prefer. Okay, so the other thing is to think niche. So you huge growth and being kind of everything to everyone is no longer the goal, and it just doesn't work. So there are so many businesses out there. I think everybody in the jewelry industry knows that the jewelry industry is a pretty saturated market. So you want to stand out, and you want to really have a strong community of people who are into your work and really talk to your audience. You want to think niche and lean into that. And a lot of times, you know, when designers are thinking of changing their price point or raising their price point, or, you know, kind of just going this one direction that they've been dreaming of, they're worried about losing, you know, potential sales. But actually leaning into that niche is what's going to lead to more sales. So you really want to think about, again, what makes your brand unique, and put a strong focus on who your ideal client is and talk to them, and don't worry about anybody else. And also conversations in the direct message, and incredible customer service, and then thinking about use statements when you're writing your captions are great ways to kind of scale down and like speak more directly to people, because it's just all about connection at this point. We want to connect. People are craving it. So that's something to think about. Okay, moving on. Okay, whoops, did I just jump ahead? Sorry, guys. Okay, best practices. So getting into kind of what to do here. One is a strong profile. This is super important, and more important than it's been in the past. When something that's really working right now, or something to consider right now, is that you want to use a photo of yourself and not your logo. You want to show your face. So put a nice headshot or a casual photo of your face. Question. Yeah, so use statements is to create the tone that you're speaking directly to a client. I should have had a good example of a use statement. I'm so sorry. Let me come back to you on that. But essentially what you're trying to do is not just speak like, you know, to the audience, to like the masses. So thinking about positioning it to be more one-to-one. So, you know, when I'm writing some of my captions, like, are you struggling with Instagram versus is everyone struggling with Instagram? So for jewelry, you know, do you love dogs? I have these great dog charms. I just saw a post with these like adorable antique dog charms. So that's how that came into my head. But what type of dog do you have? Like, talk directly to a person versus saying like, everyone loves dogs. You know, let's appreciate all dog lovers. You know, that's kind of a more general sentiment versus saying something like, you know, we know you love your dog. I love my dog. Tell me about your dog in the comments and let me know which of these charms you'd purchase. Does that make sense? Does that kind of help there? Let me know. And again, sorry for my light situation right now. It's very sunny today in Nashville. Cool. Okay, good. I'm glad that was helpful. So anyway, getting back to best practices, you want to have a strong profile. So again, this is more important than it's been in the past. So you want to use a photo of you and not your logo. People want to buy from people, and it's so much easier for them to kind of get to know you if they see your face. So that's something worth trying. And a lot of people I know love having their logo, especially if you're trying to like be a kind of bigger, more anonymous business. I totally understand. I would encourage you to try out your logo. I'm sorry, your face or a headshot as your profile picture. And if you aren't willing to do that, I'd at least consider doing an introduction post in your feed regularly. So every 3 months, 6 months, you know, as you feel comfortable, like, hey, I'm the designer behind the brand. And let people know who you are. I'm making your work. Jewelry is emotional. So if you're a maker, especially, it's really important to kind of show yourself. Like, and it doesn't, like, if you really don't want to show your face, you can show yourself in different ways, like showing your hands at work or showing your bench or your process or anything like that. It's great. Sorry, just going back to the question about use statements. Are me and my statements particularly on referencing process okay? Yeah, totally. You want to talk about yourself too. And you can talk in first person. And you can kind of mix that with third person on different posts, you know, so it doesn't have to be when you're, if you are a bigger company, you can speak in third person. And then when you, the artist, comes in and does a post or wants to share an experience or share something personal or share your process, talk about yourself. I love this part of the process because I'm choosing the colors and my favorite part is choosing the colors or whatever it is. So think about that. Think about just how you would talk in a conversation to like one person, I guess would be the best way to kind of go about that. And then when it comes to asking questions in a post, how often is it okay? And how do you get people to respond? Is it by a call to action? So asking questions is a great way to kind of get people talking to you. When you're thinking about questions to ask people, think about simple and easy to answer. And if you've been to my webinars in the past, you have heard me say this, but what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Everybody can answer that. Or like, where do you live? You know, starting off the webinar to get people chatting with me, asking where you're tuning in from is a great way because obviously everybody knows where they live. So think about questions that are easy to answer. And then a great way to kind of get the ball rolling with people answering questions is one, do it consistently. And then two, say, you know, let me know your favorite flavor of ice cream. Go to the comments and I've shared my favorite flavor of ice cream in the first comment. So you're driving people to look at your comments and then you're there with an answer. So then you've kind of broken the ice and people will start responding, hopefully. Then you could also share that post to your stories and say, hey guys, let me know your favorite flavor of ice cream on this, my latest post. So there's kind of, and you have to like kind of do this consistently. So a lot of times somebody's like, I've asked a few questions. I've done a few posts like that. Nobody's responding. When we're talking about making changes to a strategy, you have to stick to these changes for 3 to 6 months, I would say, at least, to kind of see any sort of results. So for example, I kind of like a lot of people lost, you know, kind of disconnected from the internet when the pandemic started up through really my first webinar here, which was in September. So then I kind of really started getting on Instagram again and being like, you know, I'm here, I'm showing up. And that break kind of came from me showing up really consistently every single day, showing my daily jewels, showing my face. So taking that kind of long, extended 6, 7, 8 month break from showing up consistently meant that I had to get on it again and like stay consistent. And so I would say my engagement is almost back up to where it was after since September, however long that's been, really staying consistent in it. So it takes time. There's nothing you can just do to change things, to make things better. You have to like think about your strategy, think about your messaging and stick with it. Another quick question from the audience, archiving old posts doesn't affect, from what I understand, doesn't affect the algorithm. So if you want to do that, go ahead and do that. That shouldn't be an issue. So calls to action, and Jason, who's asking this, I'll send you the link to watch my first webinar about selling on Instagram. There's so many calls to action that you could try. You know, save this post, share this post, like the example I gave before, share this post with somebody who has a February birthday because, you know, this is an amethyst ring or whatever it is. So share, save, watch this video, swipe to see the finished product, send me a message. There are so many great calls to action. So yeah, I'll send you that video and I really go through it on that one. So, okay, back to best practices and having a strong profile. So again, so important to kind of introduce yourself to your audience. Um, um, so important to introduce yourself to your audience. I think it's really great to have a photo of yourself in your profile and clearly share who you are and what you do. And to be honest, I could probably get clearer on this even in my profile. But this is where I'm at, kind of taking these best practices into place. So I'm letting you know that I'm a marketer, I'm a content creator, I'm an advocate, I'm a connector, a donor. I love wearing jewelry, and then mover and shaker of all things jewelry. So people know that I work in the jewelry industry. This is what I focus on. And if anybody's here who does art outside of the jewelry industry, I love that too. I focus primarily on jewelry designers because that's where all of my experience is. That's where my best experience is. So make sure that your profile is super clear. So if you're a maker, let people know you're a maker. Think about kind of what stands out about you and your brand and include that really clearly in your profile. And then you want to have a strong call to action. So I have work with me with an arrow. So for anybody who's kind of like finds my profile, comes to one of my webinars, I want them to know that they can work with me. I am available to hire, and that I have a link with all of the resources and ways to work with me right there that they can click on. So in terms of what types of calls to action, which Jason just clarified that he was wondering ideas for calls to action in the profile, you could try sign up for my newsletter, see my latest collection. If you're kind of promoting a specific collection, explore the new Valentine's Day collection. Shop for Valentine's Day. You can switch this out too. It doesn't have to stay the same all the time. I love the idea of having an arrow or an emoji pointing to a link, just to be super clear with people. But yeah, so calls to action, maybe, if you are kind of just wanting to push buying or shopping, tell them why or specifically what to click on that link to purchase. So if you're kind of really focused again on a specific collection, or going into February, you're focused on amethyst, click here to shop amethyst jewelry, or click here to shop my favorite pieces. I've curated, maybe you're talking about a curated collection. Click here to enter my giveaway. Click here to sign up for my email list and save 10%. There's a lot of different things you can try out there. And then you want your highlights to align with your messaging. So a lot of times I look at people's profiles and their highlights are kind of just random, or just, not necessarily thought out, or anything specific. So I am thinking about what I'm focused on in terms of how I'm kind of organizing my highlights. So I have Instagram, which I just did a bunch of answers to questions on my stories about Instagram. And then I was promoting this webinar. So that's my first highlight bubble. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I love talking about Asheville, North Carolina, even though I haven't been out quite as much recently. And then, daily jewels is something that I show up when I can. I've been wearing the same earrings for weeks, months. So I haven't been doing it as much. But I used to check in every day with my daily jewels, and then people would share their daily jewels with me, and I would share them to my stories. So I have highlights, kind of saving all of that great content. And then my collection, which most of the photos that I take and share feature my personal collection of jewelry, not jewelry made by me, but jewelry I've collected. So that's one of the bubbles. And then work with me is another one. Another highlight. I want people to know that they can work with me, that I am for hire. So if you're kind of the things you're focused on is, that you're a maker, that you use a specific material, you're promoting a specific collection. So you have that as one of your main highlights. Your inspiration, you're inspired by, say, art or something like that, share that, put all those posts together. If you have people who share their client photos with you, and you share these client photos to your stories, I put that as a highlight. And then also custom. If you're pushing custom work, definitely have a highlight of your custom work. So that's right there, because right now we're looking at how I've cropped this is the profile, and this is what people see first. They see your bio, your link, and your highlights. And something, just to kind of point out, Instagram, again, has changed their algorithm this year. And something that they did change that's kind of big is that now everything is searchable. So it's not just hashtags, which I should have mentioned this when I was talking about hashtags, but all of the words that you put out there, and if you're doing alt text for your photos, it's all searchable. So what this means that it means that oh my gosh, where was I going with this? Sorry. So it means that any kind of text you put out there is searchable. So I forget where I was going with that. I'm so sorry. But it's a good to know that your captions are super important with or without hashtags to kind of help people find you. And then another interesting statistic that I saw recently is that 50% of people find your content on the Explore page. So if you're wondering how people find you, a lot of times it's on the Explore page, and it has to do with who's liking and engaging with your content. And it has to do with like kind of your engagement being high and Instagram wanting to share your content to more people. So they'll serve it to more people on their Explore pages if you get high engagement. Okay, a couple questions came through. How do you link? Yeah, so link in bio, this link is the only link on your profile that can be hyperlinked, so somebody can click to it. So you can't put a link that you can click to in your captions. Some people have access to swipe up links if you have over 10,000 followers, but this is really your only hyperlink. And then if you'll notice, I have a link tree address, so I can have multiple links. I have that just because I've been doing a bunch of webinars. I have a bunch of things to link to. For an artist, I would encourage you to, just so people feel really confident, especially if you have an older clientele, I'd encourage you to just use your website so they feel comfortable clicking it, because I'm sure that like an older audience might feel weird clicking on this link because they don't know what it is. Just something to think about. So you can switch this link out and switch the call to action out, or you could do something like a link tree where you have multiple links. It's kind of up to you. And how do you start creating highlights? So when you do stories, there's an option as you're posting to add to highlight, or if you're on your main profile page, add a highlight is one of the bubbles. So you'll see a blank bubble here and it'll say add a highlight. Okay. So what I just said about everything being searchable and SEO and stuff like that, that doesn't mean you necessarily need to use more specific keywords or jam full of keywords. It's just something to keep in mind. Even with SEO on a website, you don't necessarily want to cram in search terms or specific words. Think again, as you're kind of sharing content, what your audience wants to hear and what they're maybe searching for. They're probably not searching for 18 karat gold, but they might be searching for custom projects. Yes, and you can go back and highlight old stories and posts. Just go into your archive, and then you can choose to add and organize into highlights. Does posting from a caption writer app have any effect on results? Also, do alternative fonts and symbols have an effect, or do emojis matter? So great questions. The alternative text font drives me insane. I don't like it. Also, I think that maybe isn't searchable just in general. So if that's something you're worried about, but also I find it confusing and hard to read. Something that is important is line breaks, I think, which I talk about a little bit later too. So yeah, so line breaks, making sure it's easy to read and kind of consume. Emojis are nice just because they add some like color and they can help with like the line breaks and making it all easy to read, and it can help with attention grabbing. But I don't think having posting from any other app or anything like that affects things. I tend to write my captions in my notes app or on Google Docs first and then copy and paste. And then You can only share stories to your highlights. You can't share feed posts. I think that was the question there. Okay. Moving on to more best practices. So when you go to create a highlight, you'll choose your post for your highlight, and then you'll be able to type in what you want to call that highlight, and then you'll be able to choose an image. Okay. More best practices. So you want to engage more than you post, which this is a tough one. When we're talking about how to grow and how to increase your engagement, actually getting out there and engaging is really important. But I know like a lot of you are so busy. You're making, you're doing your accounting, you're selling, you're doing all of these things. So this is a tough one for people, but think about following the right people. I find it easiest that I'm following people I want to be engaging with. So a lot of times when I'm talking to designers, I mention you don't have to follow other designers. You don't have to follow gem dealers. You want to think outside of the industry. You want to think about following clients and potential clients and like-minded brands who might have a different clientele than you, but could be serving your ideal client. Think about those types of people. And then if you're following the right people, it does make it easier to kind of just scroll through your feed and engage versus going out and searching for people to engage with. So that would be a tip to kind of quicken the process. But I think that setting aside maybe 10, 20 minutes a day to engage more would be really beneficial. And let's face it, you're probably just mindlessly scrolling anyway. If you're like me, you might not be doing that. But I always find myself mindlessly scrolling, and I have to remind myself to do something productive or get off the app. So a good goal would be maybe like to give 50 likes a day and leave 10 thoughtful comments. And again, targeting ideal clients and thinking outside of the industry. Talking within the industry is not going to do anything for you. And so follow back people who are clients or potential clients or somebody that you kind of want to be following back. I think following clients is cool, and it's something that has always been a little bit taboo maybe, but keeping in touch with those people who are collectors or clients of yours and following them on Instagram is awesome. Then you're engaging with them. You know what they're into. You know if they love their dog and love talking about their dog. And then you can have a conversation with them about that. And then it makes that sale, when you're ready to make that sale, it makes it so much easier. So really think about following like clients and potential clients, your ideal customer, and again, like-minded brands who are outside of the industry. Restaurants, if you're thinking local, think about like all the local businesses you can really follow, because that will help you be seen by more local businesses, as an example. Okay, and then if you've, again, been to any of my talks before, you know that sales happen in the DMs. I talk about this a lot. So you want to get people into your direct messages. So if you're if somebody's commenting, what's the price on one of your posts, say, do you mind if I send you a DM, and get them in your direct messages, chatting with you. And also like as you're posting stories, as you're talking about, I got dogs on the brain. Mine's barking over there, so it could be that. But if you're posting your dog, like invite people to share, like tell me about your dog. Get people talking to you, because the more comfortable they are talking to you about anything, the weather, your dog, your lunch, whatever you're sharing, the more comfortable they'll feel asking about a custom piece or the price of an item, or anything like that. So that's where sales happen in the DMs. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay. So these are some mistakes you might be making if you're like, Liz, I'm like listening to you. I feel like I'm doing all of these things, but it's still just like not working. One thing is your messaging might not be clear. And a good thing to do is to kind of like maybe ask a friend or somebody who's not super close to your brand, somebody outside the industry. what they're seeing, get some feedback there. It's crucial for every aspect of marketing to understand your brand. And if you don't, your followers won't either. And I have a typo there. I'm so sorry. I will fix that before I send it out. Answer these questions. And if you've, again, been at one of my webinars before, you might have seen these questions, but I'm going to say it again because it's so important. And also I want to say that like branding and marketing and figuring out your messaging is ongoing work. It's not something that you just kind of arrive at. A lot of designers get really stuck on this. Your why you're doing it, why you're here, what you want to be saying. Those are big questions and they're very vague and there's no easy answer. But for example, when I'm working with a bigger brand, when I was working with Todd Reed, we'd have meetings every week to we wouldn't necessarily keep talking about the same thing, but we'd always come back to the messaging and what we were saying and refining it. So it's an ongoing thing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be something that you have in a formal document or a formal plan. It could be just in a notebook. It's just something to think about and continue to think about. And sometimes looking at your insights and seeing what your ideal clients, what posts they're engaging with, and also thinking about, this isn't a stat that you can see on Instagram, but thinking about what posts led to sales is good too, to kind of help, understand what's really connecting with people, how you're connecting with people, what's making people respond and do something. So anyway, you want to get clear on these questions. What is your core message? What makes you unique? What are your goals? Who is your ideal customer? And this is a really tough one, but I'm going to say it, and it's going to be a tough one for everyone. But why should people care? Why should people care about what you're doing, what you're saying on Instagram, what you're creating? And again, a tough question to ask yourself and to confront, but really important, because if you're doing a post to do a post and you don't know why somebody should care about that post, then they're not going to. You can't just put stuff out there and expect people to engage and respond and be excited if you're not sure what you're saying. And then another thing is, and I get into this too, and this has really harmed my engagement and growth over the past year, and probably longer than that, but especially over the past year, you're obsessing over your grid. Having a perfect grid with perfect photography that portrays a perfect lifestyle no longer works. We want reality. People want to see reality. They want to be able to relate and connect. So for example, this was super out of my comfort zone, but I posted the live video I did with Kathleen Cutler yesterday that was very unplanned to IGTV, but I also shared a preview in my feed. And so my grid is not looking perfect right now. And that's something that's like always stressed me out, but it's leading to follows. It's leading to more people signed up for this webinar. I'm getting great comments, really thoughtful comments, and I'm getting DMs of people asking about working with me. So don't stress over having a perfect grid, because it's actually the imperfection that's going to lead to sales in a way. As long as it's all aligned with your messaging, this will work out beautifully for you. Okay. So here I'm going to get into the 10 things to focus on, and then I'm going to get into a Q&A. Yeah. Stop stressing about the grid. Everybody raise your hand. Let me know if you're stressing about your grid, because we all need to stop. I'm with you. Oh, good. Oh, people actually are raising their hand. That's so fun. Okay, cool. Stop stressing. Stop stressing. Have a game plan. But yeah, I'm going to be less perfect about my grid, and I hope everyone joins me. So, okay. 10 things to focus on. So these are the 10 things that I think are most important to be focusing on Instagram. Oh, and if you don't know what I mean by grid, when you go to your profile and you see all of your feed posts lined up, having them all work together beautifully, only sharing like really perfect photos, not sharing like something on your cell phone, like maybe you're just working with professional photos, professional model shots, things like that. That's what I mean by the grid, all of your feed posts kind of on your profile page. Okay, 10 things that I think are most on Instagram to find success. One thing is video, and video is something that overwhelms a lot of people, and I'm overwhelmed by it too. But even doing a video where you're just talking to the camera with no fun editing, fancy editing, nothing like that, you're just talking to the camera, is great for engagement. Or if you're doing a time lapse of you at your bench and just your hands and working, awesome. On stories, reels, IGTV, or just your feed, videos lead to more engagement, and this leads to growth because a video view is a great way to gain engagement. It's an easy engagement, and also Instagram is really prioritizing video, so they're showing video to more people. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, just talking to the camera, or just doing a time lapse or showing your hands or doing some really simple video would be great. Two is carousel posts. So these are said to be the most engaging type of posts. And if you're if you're posting a video in your feed, I would share that post to your stories. On stories, you can go on, and you've seen me do this, I'm sure, just talk to the camera on stories and show video content there. I'm a big advocate for showing your face on camera and talking to your audience, especially in a year without shows, especially if you're a craft artist who hasn't been to shows and you usually make the bulk of your income from doing craft fairs or events like that. Your clients, your audience, they want to see you, they want to connect with you. And then I've said this before, but there's a science behind somebody looking into your eyes. It builds trust. So I'm a big advocate for that. But stories in general, on stories in general, like share and video in general is great. It makes the piece feel more real and like tangible. Like it feels like more of an in-person selling experience versus photos that are like beautifully done. They feel less real. So like if you're just showing a photo of these earrings, you might not understand the scale. You might not understand how they make noise and how they catch the light and things like that. So showing a video of these would be really important to maybe sell them. So even showing a piece of jewelry in your hand on your stories, or again in your feed or reels or IGTV, is a great way to kind of get people to more engaged with the piece, like they're able to touch it and try it on. So that's from a jewelry perspective, showing jewelry in motion is awesome. And then from a like building trust, a trust standpoint, showing your face and all of that is super important. Lots of questions about what is a carousel post. So that's just a post where you have multiple images, like the slideshow post, you can swipe to another image. So the technical term is carousel post. Maybe it's a slideshow post, a post in your feed that has multiple images. So these are said to be the most engaging type of post for a lot of reasons. One of them being that swipe is an easy way to get somebody to engage, and Instagram counts that as engagement. So if you're sharing a piece in process and then you say swipe to see the finished piece, or you're sharing, a stylized piece and you want to say swipe to see this in motion, or swipe to see this being worn. It's a really easy way to get people to engage with you. The other thing about carousel posts is that once somebody has consumed it, the first post, maybe they swiped past it or like scrolled past it. Maybe they didn't stop. It didn't catch their attention. Instagram will serve it to them again, showing the second photo. And then also if you have you can do up to 10 photos in a carousel post. So if you have somebody spending that amount of time swiping through all 10 photos, you're having them stay on your post longer, which again, Instagram likes in terms of engagement. And that counts as engagement. So it's a really easy way to get great engagement. So something to try out, doing multiple photos in a feed post and giving people a reason to swipe, telling them why to swipe. Okay. Then Instagram stories is super important. And this has been super important for a while. It continues to be really important. From a post on stories, it's so easy to get into somebody's direct messages. And then also on stories, there's so many great, easy ways and fun ways to get people to engage with you. For example, poll questions, question boxes, quizzes, this little swipey emoji bar thing. There's a lot of fun stickers that you can find to get people to really start training your followers and your audience to start engaging with you. So if you're like, going back to a question we had earlier today, was like, I'm asking questions in my feed and nobody's responding, you have to kind of start training your audience. And one easy way is asking a poll question. And then another thing about like somebody responding to a poll question, that means that in the way the algorithm works, that person is going to get served your story content more often. So when you're looking and consuming the content on your feed and in your stories, and you're just like going on Instagram as a consumer, you'll notice that the people you engage with the most are at the top of your feed, and in stories at the front of your stories. So what this means is that if they're answering a poll, Instagram's going to serve them your stories more often and show them more often that you're there posting. Same with why engagement's so important in your feed too, because then your audience gets served your content first. And so emojis and the stickers and like the fun things, like in terms of if they're appropriate for your audience, that's something to think about. You could be thinking about your brand in terms of like, I only use the emojis, the heart with the sparkles, or the sparkles. Those are my emojis for my brand. That's what I use. I have a client that just uses the blue heart. So think about what emojis you want to be using if you do want to use emojis. You don't have to use emojis. The stickers, stickers could be a poll. I think that's just what they're called. I think that, my mom uses emojis. I think about your brand and what makes sense for you, for your audience, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily inappropriate to use emojis if you have an older audience. What do you think about making a story from your post the same post and story? So if you watched my other chats, you know that I kind of do create a story strategy based on your post. So if you're doing a post of, like, for example, if I'm posting this image that I took in my feed, then I'm sharing this post to my stories, because sometimes you have a different audience watching, looking at your feed versus watching your stories. So I'm sharing this to my stories, and then I'm doing a video showcasing the charms in this necklace up close. So you're giving more context. And if I were a maker, for example, I'd show like how maybe some process shots, or maybe I'd show how I curated this charm necklace, what other charms are in my collection. Maybe I'd ask a question and say, like, what charms are on your charm necklace, or send me a photo of your charm necklace. I'd love to see. So there's a lot you can do to align all of your content so that it's all working together, but slightly different, if that makes sense. Okay, so something else to focus on is shares. Again, we've talked about this at length before, so I'll kind of breeze past it, but shares are one of the best ways to grow your following. Creating shareable content, encouraging people to share your content. Okay, captions. Captions are a really important thing to be thinking about now. Captions didn't used to be so important. If you scroll all the way back in your Instagram feed, or all the way back in my Instagram feed, I remember just posting with like one-word captions, and the picture really kind of did all of the work, because Instagram used to just be a photo sharing app. But now it's so much more, again, coming back to, it's about storytelling. So Instagram only shows the first 2 lines of a caption before you click read more. So you want to encourage your audience to read more and make sure those first 2 sentences are enough to kind of pull people into what you're saying. And then you want to, again, relate back to your followers and think about why they should care. Why do they care about this caption? Like, what is this doing for them? Why should they be interested? And then long posts are good. It doesn't mean that you necessarily need to do every post super long and write a ton of content. But the longer somebody spends on a post, engaging with it, reading it is engaging with it, the more Instagram likes your content. So the more it plays into working with the algorithm. So long posts are good. I would encourage using line breaks, and to kind of like just make it easier to read, and end with a strong call to action. Call to actions being, message me, or save this post, or share this post, or let me know your favorite flavor of ice cream, or click the link in my profile, or whatever it is. There's tons of calls to action you can do, but make sure every post has a point, and you're not just posting to feed the Instagram. You're posting with purpose. Okay, and you want to focus on conversations. You want to talk to your followers and invite them to talk to you. Sales are going to happen through conversation. They're not necessarily going to happen through you posting a pretty picture. Of course, certainly they could, but really somebody seeing that piece of jewelry and then feeling like they want to support you and want to buy from you, and they feel like they feel comfortable, they trust you. That's all that leads to a sale. And I'm sure a lot of you are selling in your direct messages, or you're getting inquiries of pricing and things like that. And if you missed the chat, I did again on live, Instagram live, which I saved to my feed on Instagram. Watch that, because we talk a lot about how to kind of follow up with people, how to sell in the DMs, and then all of my webinars with Kathleen in the past, which are all accessible through my profile also. Really kind of go into that more in depth. So, and then again, direct messages, that's where the sales are going to happen. Yeah, I love rose glass. I was very into pink. I did kind of this series of photos that included pink glass, and I'm kind of thinking about my next series of photos. I shot these on my iPhone, just so, I just kind of played around, waited for good light, and took these photos, but the theme was the rose colored glass. So I don't know if anybody was wondering about that, but trying to think of my next series. Okay. Consistency, another thing to really focus on. This builds trust. Another thing that builds trust with your audience. It means that they know what to expect from you. So consistency is huge. And that consistency doesn't necessarily mean that you post every single day. They're actually, everybody's kind of, all the social media experts and everyone is actually encouraging less posting and more engaging. To my point earlier, engage more, post less. But you want to stay consistent with it. So is it 3 times a week? Is it once a week? Are you posting, are you showing your face on stories every day? What can you commit to and stay consistent in that? And, knowing your messaging and having clear messaging is going to help you stay consistent with what you're saying too. So if you're consistent in kind of all aspects of what you're putting out there, you will build your audience with real people. And then individual connections. So like get bigger by thinking smaller. So don't blow off, that price inquiry. Although I know that people are ghosted. I know that can be frustrating, but answer each, price question with full clienteling. Don't ignore somebody who's sending you a heart emoji to one of your stories, or just leaving a heart emoji on as a comment on one of your posts. These people are potential leads, and you can follow up with them. You can comment back to them. You can, follow them if they seem like an ideal client, and really like kind of nurture these relationships. And then the last thing that I think is really important to focus on, that maybe we don't think about if we're selling a product, but is actually very important, is community. So creating a community leads to loyalty and trust. And building trust is obviously a theme throughout all of this stuff. But, sharing your brand values has become super important this year. And, really knowing what you stand for and communicating that is something that really leads to an engaged following. Listening to your audience. So when you're asking these questions, if you're asking like, do you love lapis or turquoise? If people choose lapis, if it's overwhelmingly lapis, maybe you want to talk more about lapis. So listen to what they're responding with. Don't just do the polls necessarily, and think about the responses, and think about how you can kind of weave that into what you're saying to connect deeper with everyone. So listen to what you're getting. encourage user-generated content, which I know is something that's tough. Getting people to send you photos of work, of them wearing the work, things like that. But the more you encourage it and the more you show it, the better it is. So when I was talking about the daily jewels posts that I've done in the past, it takes a lot of effort to get people to send me the jewelry they're wearing. And for a while, when I was like doing it consistently and asking consistently, I was getting some great pictures and awesome stories. And it was really, really cool. Recently, since I kind of like stopped changing my jewelry every day or showing it every day, I've been getting less and less content. But I would, with me sharing them and them sharing me and all of that kind of cross promotion, I was really growing my following at a steady pace. So that's user generated content too. So you don't necessarily have to ask, maybe you could look for other ways to get people to share. So maybe it's not them sharing their jewelry. Maybe it's them sharing their dog. If you're like a big dog lover, like send me a picture of your dog, I'd love to see. And then you share their dog and they share that post where you tag them, things like that. You can think about kind of getting this like cross promotion in a lot of different fun ways that really are conversational and fun and could still like really align with your brand, especially if, you have a shop dog, for example, and you're like to share your dog in your shop or whatever, then maybe it makes sense to ask that. But think, outside the box, think about like what would be really fun. I have a client who used to like just do like Sunday prompts, like ask, specific questions, and just ask questions on Sundays and then share all of the responses. So there's a lot of fun ways you can get your audience kind of engaged with you and like kind of start forming a community around it. Again, this takes time. This is not something you're just going to start doing, and it's not going to just happen overnight. Another thing that really helps build a community is doing live videos. And, over the holidays, a lot of the gals in the Stay Gold Collective have done live videos where they really have like everybody kind of talking to each other in the chat bit of the live, and then the designer who's talking or selling or whatever is saying, oh yeah, you have this bracelet and then you have this bracelet and you guys kind of match, but you live in Seattle and you live in Pennsylvania or whatever it is. Can be really fun to kind of do an event like that where people are kind of bonding around your jewelry. People are like fans of your work, they're collecting your work, and then they're starting to connect with each other. And that's super cool. That's how you start building a community. And that really does lead to repeat purchases, people becoming advocates for you and talking about you and your brand, and putting out content where they're showcasing the jewelry from you that they're wearing and things like that. So lots of cool things you can be doing. So I'd love to see if anybody has any questions. This was a lot of information. I thought it was not going to be this much, but let me know what questions you have. I'm going to talk a little bit about my online community and how you can work with me for a really reasonable price. And then we'll get to questions. And so let me know what's on your mind. Okay, so I have a community, which I love, and it's called the Stay Gold Collective, and it's essentially ongoing support. So if you're looking for content like this, more regularly, if you want to see content like this in a broader scope, like email marketing is what we're talking about this week. We talk about wholesale. I have some great retailers coming on to chat with us in the next few weeks. We kind of really cover everything that's in sales marketing realm. And then also you have full access to me to DM me questions. I'm glad to like look at your post or, have more personalized feedback, things like that. But if you join, it's $40 a month. You have instant access to 50 training videos. So you have access to, and I think it's more than 50. I kind of just guessed that number, but it's the past 2 years of content. You have access to all of that as soon as you sign up, and it's a lot of content. Weekly Zoom chats. Every Thursday we meet on Zoom. Monthly, I bring in at least one industry expert to chat with. We talked to Robin Kramer a couple weeks ago. We talked to Shopify web developer last week. Lots of great stuff. And lots of great people coming up too. So we also, again, I answer your sales and marketing questions. I'm available. And then there's just like this awesome community of designers. We're also doing hot seats where we get more group feedback. And then we're going to be kind of doing these breakout sessions where we're talking about fine jewelry specifically, and then demi-fine. So it really does cover a huge spectrum of people. So if you go to patreon.com/LizKantner, you can sign up and I'll be in touch with you pretty immediately to kind of get you all the information and get you set up with everything you need. I am going to raise the price to $50 a month February 1st, which has been like a long time coming and I've been dragging my feet on it. It's still a really affordable program. I'd love to answer questions about this if this is a right fit for you at any point. If you're looking for just like some quick, more direct feedback on something you're doing, I do offer consulting calls, so just let me know. I'm glad to send you a link for that. Feel free to email me, ask me questions, DM me. Let me know you watched this chat. Let me know what you got out of it, what your biggest takeaway was. Let me know if you have any wins from any of the things you try. I'd love to hear. So I'm going to answer some questions, but leave your Instagram handle in the chat box, or if it's easier, just send me a DM so I can take a look at your profile. And follow along and all of that. But this is how you contact me with any questions you have. So, okay. Estelle's asking, how do I share a video on a post to a story? I tried that yesterday. All that came up was on frame when I touched it. So if you go to post a photo or in stories, or go to post in stories, you can swipe up and access your camera roll. So then you have access to everything that you might want to share. So you could do the video in advance. I often do a video right in the app. So if you go in and hold, go to where you snap a photo, but you hold the button down, it films a video. The videos can only be 15 seconds. So, okay, let me see what other questions. How would you approach asking for a review from clients who have purchased your jewelry? Just wondering if it's cringe or or a faux pas. So I think that like being really conversational about it, especially if they had a great experience with you and you know that, and they sent, thanks, my ring arrived, thank you so much. You could write back to that and say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Would you mind sharing your experience for me? Let me know what you thought about the whole process, or whatever it is. I think just asking is a great way to do it. You could certainly have a section for reviews after somebody adds something to cart and purchases on your website. But if you're doing higher end pieces where you're emailing or DMing or whatever it is, I think it's totally fine to ask. And the more you kind of build these relationships with clients, the easier it'll be to kind of get information like that from them or ask that from them. And then also, if you have reviews on your website or you're sharing reviews on Instagram, people might be more inclined to just give them to you or share their experience. Why some of my stories have much higher reach than others. Some stories are seen by 500 people and the next day only 200 people. So it could be a lot of things. It could be that you posted too many stories and maybe they've just lost interest. It could mean that, sometimes I think it's interesting when I post a bunch of stories in a row where people start to fall off. So looking at those numbers, it could be the day of the week. It could be if you used a hashtag on your story or a geolocation, it could be that. It could be a lot of different reasons there, but I'd pay attention to the stories that are seen by more people, because that could mean that they're more interesting to your audience. Okay. Stories versus feed, or does it not matter as long as you're using more video? So I would see where your audience is. So some people do have more people interested in or engaging with our content in their feed, whereas some people like just have killer engagement on stories. So I think that kind of looking at your analytics and seeing where people are spending most of their time would be a good indicator of where to put your effort. But I would just, if you're just starting out with a video strategy, or you're very like new to kind of showing your face on camera or doing a voiceover or sharing video, I would start in your stories and then kind of move to your feed, maybe as a game plan. But it doesn't necessarily matter. The feed, like the IGTV, the Reels, posting on those platforms, your video, or posting in your feed video, you're going to get more of those benefits of having more views, if that makes sense. So I think that, if you're dipping your toe in, try out your stories, and then maybe figure out how to get to doing feed content or more static content with video. Okay, looking at, should we archive less pretty photos? Not necessarily, as long as it's telling the same story or like the clear messaging, the messaging you want to get across, there's no reason to archive posts. If you used to do like wire wrapped work and you've worked your way up to doing like, sterling silver, or you have a different kind of aesthetic to what you're doing, that's when you want to archive posts. Or if you have a ton of personal content, and you kind of shifted more into a business profile, then you want to archive. But you don't necessarily need to archive things that aren't pretty, as long as they're on brand and on message. I don't know of a nuts and bolts guide to Instagram and how to use everything. I would say Google. I'm glad to talk people through things, but Google is the best for answering like simple questions. Like yesterday when I was about to go live and I couldn't find the button, I just checked in with Google and figured it out. So I think that that's always a great resource. Does auto scheduling posts on an app like later affect visibility? So not that I know of. I like to post in the feed, or like in the app. And I've always done that. I have all my posts planned out and like copy and paste and ready to go. But I like to post them in the app because then it encourages me to go and engage with other content like right after I post it. I just like to do that, but posting in an app like later shouldn't affect visibility from as far as I know. I haven't heard otherwise. In general, are more people looking at stories than scrolling through the feed? So it depends. It definitely depends. Like I had said before, it depends on your audience. So I'd look at your analytics to see where your audience is spending a lot of time. The person asking, I would guess you have a lot of people in stories. And then I would also guess, well, one, I love your stories. Like I love when you do stories, but also because you are selling and showing so many different designers and stuff like that, and your stories like really inviting people to talk to you there, I think would be a great game plan. Stories are really beneficial if you're like really showcasing product that's available for sale. So, and then geolocation, I would just do if you're a store, if you're a brick and mortar, I would do your exact geolocation, because if somebody is searching the general city, so if somebody's searching Asheville, North Carolina, and I geotagged my specific store in Asheville, North Carolina, it's still going to come up. So there's no necessarily benefit to just generally tagging Asheville, North Carolina. So if you want to change your Instagram handle, it's really easy. You just do it when you edit your profile. And I think you can only probably change it a few times before they block you from doing that, or a few times every certain number of days. But it's just when you go to edit profile, you should be able to easily edit your username. Where do you plan out compose your posts to copy into Instagram? So I use UNUM, and it's an app where you can upload a bunch of photos and move them around pretty easily to kind of plan out your grid visually, what you plan to post visually. And then I screenshot that and drop it into Google Docs. And then I create a table with a thumbnail of the image I want to post. And then I write the caption. And then I have another column where I make notes on what I want to share in stories. That works really well for me because I like Google Docs, and if I'm working with a client, they can edit it on their end if they need to. And then also the app on my phone, I have the Google Docs app on my phone so when I'm going to post, I open that app, I look at the photo I'm about to post, and then I copy and paste the caption, look at what I need to do for stories, and then I go into the Instagram app and do that. And then on my phone, I have like all my clients and separated into folders. And then I also have a Dropbox where I have all those photos as well. And then for my own personal Instagram, I just have stuff favorited, so heart it. And that's where I usually pull from. So I do it. I've used Later, and I plan to use Later in the future. And I also like Iconosquare. And I've also heard Tailwind is good. I've only used Tailwind for scheduling on Pinterest, but I've heard it's good for Instagram as well. I don't mind those apps. I just find it easier to kind of just do it in the app. Just works better for me. So is it worth the time to organize the Insta Facebook store? So the thing about having a Facebook store where you're like tagging products on Instagram and doing that, or having your shop within just Instagram, that's an option now, is that you still have to do all this work. You still have to increase your engagement and build trust with your clients and do all of this stuff. It's not necessarily going to, depending on your price point. This depends on your price point, because if you have a lower price point item, it might make sense. But if you're selling higher end jewelry, even, $500 and over, $300 and over, having a product tagged on post isn't going to magically lead to a sale. You're still going to have a compelling caption and clear messaging, and do some of these other things that we've been talking about to really, again, build trust and build, a strong audience. So I'm not a super huge fan. I mostly manage pages for fine jewelry designers, so I'm not a super huge fan of tagging product, but it does. One of the benefits, if you are in the high-end space, it does take away that barrier. Like, people will know, tap it, see the thing's $5,000, and then you know that if they're asking about it, they have $5,000 to spend. They're not going to be thrown off and say, oh, I thought that's too expensive, I thought that was $200 or whatever. So and a high-end jewelry brand that tags their product that's really interesting to me is David Webb. They tag most of their products. So it's certainly something to do. I don't think it's a game changer as of yet. If you have product that is $20 or like $50 or $100, if you're like kind of in that more low price category, it might make sense. Should you be cross-posting the same content across Instagram modes, for instance, feed to story to reels? So I like to have a general feed or a general theme. Like, just to give you an example, like February, amethyst. So my email marketing is going to feature amethyst. It's going to be a consistent kind of thing I'm talking about in my Instagram content and on stories. So I wouldn't say post the same exact thing on all places. Sharing a post to stories is something I encourage, but thinking about how you're saying the same thing or staying within the same theme and putting it on all of your platforms and keeping that messaging consistent, because you have to talk about something a lot for people to kind of catch on. Like this webinar, I'm kicking myself because I could have been talking about it more because I could have done more with it. I could have gotten more people here. You know what I mean? And I talked about it a lot, I feel like. So if you're ever feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about this thing too much, I'm doing too much with this, I'm saying too much, or I'm like, boring my client, or it's repetitive or whatever, repetition is really important because you're only catching people for a few seconds. So you definitely want to make sure they see the thing that you're talking about. So to the person who was asking about giveaways before, or if you do a sale that doesn't really work, you need to do a lot of promotion for those things to get people, one, to remember that it's happening, and then two, to like really go through the process of thinking about if they want to purchase something and then going to actually purchase something or to enter the giveaway. These things have to have a ton of promotion. So you don't want to never feel like you're maybe posting about something too much. You want to have like a really strong strategy when you're doing something like that. Cool. Lars thinking about joining the Stay Gold Collective. It's really awesome. I mean, if you try it for a month and don't love it, totally cool. But just the access to the amount of content, the community, and the information I offer I think it's a great value. So I have a question in the question box. I'm not sure if there's more coming through about ads and promoted posts. This is something I get a lot. I would never just sponsor a post just to boost a post. I don't think that's an effective strategy. I think that's throwing away your money. I'm not a huge advocate for ads, social media advertising in general. And then when you're thinking about like Google ads and things like that, that's like a bigger conversation. But in general, if you're doing promoted posts, or if you want to have a social media ad strategy or do a campaign, you have to really think about your year, think about your budget for specific timeframes, and you want to like really plan that out. Just boosting a post, again, it's just throwing away your money. And the reason why I'm like kind of anti social media advertising in general with jewelry is that the people you're trying to reach in a lot of cases aren't have their privacy settings, so you can't necessarily reach them. I think it's really hard to target the right people. I will say that, you know, if you're a local store, it could be worth it to target, you know, because then you're targeting a location, but you're also looking at tourists too, maybe. So I think it's something to think about a larger strategy for, but you'd want to think about running like a 3-month campaign, not just boosting a post. And try out doing Facebook ads, not easy. You have to really try out a bunch of different target audiences, kind of see what works, try out a bunch of different ad creative. It's something that should be done with a lot of thought, I think. I have a hard time with target ideal customer. Is it more women in age group A to B wanting to express their unique personal style who are into art? So what type of art are they into? Get more specific, create like a whole persona. Oh, sorry. Before, when I was mentioning tagging products, David Webb, he is a really high-end, well-known jeweler who tags all their products, which I think is super interesting. Anyway, back to this question. When you're thinking about targeting your ideal customer and kind of creating a persona for them, where do they eat? Where do they shop? What brands do they buy? What type of art? Is it what era art? You know, like get really specific. Like, are they vegetarian even? You could get that specific. And so that's really hard because then that's like niching down in a really big way. And it feels like you're cutting out a ton of other audience, potential audience. But the more you kind of understand exactly who that person is and start talking to them, the more engaged your audience will become and the more you'll grow your sales. Okay. Yeah, Instagram doesn't love giveaways. So that could be why maybe some people trying giveaways recently aren't necessarily working that great. I mean, like Gem Gossip still does a ton of giveaways, for example, but it's not the best way to like grow an audience that like a really like qualified audience, because again, people might just follow in order to win and then unfollow. I have customers on both Instagram and Facebook. Most are on both. Is it bad to post the same thing on both platforms? No, I like to send both my Instagram posts to Facebook. Something to keep in mind about Facebook is it's really hard to grow your following there. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. But if you have customers there, definitely share content there. Something to consider is that Facebook really likes posts that have multiple images or have links or have things like that. So I'll share all my Instagram posts to Facebook, and then I'll also like go into Facebook maybe once a week, a couple times a week, and share a link or like an album of images, like here's my latest custom project start to finish or whatever. So sometimes I'll do extra content on Facebook. But no, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's repetitive, because I think that there's a different client in both places. And then also, if it is repetitive, you do see the same thing twice, if a client sees the same thing twice, but if they happen to like that thing, it could really encourage them to go and purchase. Yeah. So what else was I going to say about that? Oh, LinkedIn is something that I've been getting a lot of questions about recently. I think LinkedIn is an interesting platform if you have a big network there. So like, again, if you're targeting like a working woman who is a self-purchaser, which working woman might be like an old term. Anyway, you're somebody who's very into like, treating themselves or, buying their own things or whatever. And you have like an incredible audience on LinkedIn of self-purchasers or like potential clients or people that you think would be a good fit. I would share your press there. I would share relevant links about your work there. I wouldn't necessarily share product and like marketing posts, but I think that it could be a good strategy to share kind of any press you receive or anytime you're mentioned. Or, just sharing if you've never like introduced yourself to your friends and family or your network on LinkedIn, it could be good to share like your about page on your website and be like, hey guys, like I make jewelry, like this is what I do, sort of thing. Could be really, really good. Because, friends and family are a great place if you're just getting started. That's a great place to start in terms of selling and growing a network. Okay. I think we're coming to the end here. And I've gone 42 minutes longer, which I don't mind. I love answering questions. So Pinterest is a whole other thing. I don't see, unless again, you're selling like a lower price point item. Pinterest is a tough place because I don't think the audience is there for demi-fine or fine jewelry necessarily. And I also think that Pinterest is like mood boards, and I don't know that it leads to sales. Something that is good about Pinterest is that Google search pulls all of that. So you could, if you have strong Pinterest posts, then it could show up in Google search, which is great. I have a whole chat about Pinterest with Becky Stone from Diamonds in the Library. She has like millions of views on Pinterest. And that's a pretty good chat. But I'm not a Pinterest expert, really. This I kind of answered before, but is it good to erase non-active followers even though it'll lower your number? Yeah, definitely. I think that if you have ghost followers or people are following you that are definitely spam, I would block them or get rid of them because it will help your engagement. I wouldn't spend hours and hours doing this. I've done that and it has just been very time consuming. So as people follow you, maybe look at them, make sure they're a real person. And if not, or if they're a gem dealer, maybe just block them or remove them. I think that's great. I wouldn't worry about getting to 10K followers just to have the swipe up link, because I think it's actually more impactful and more beneficial to invite people to direct message with you. There's not a huge benefit to having the swipe up link, although it does seem more convenient. Sending people to your profile is perfectly fine, but even better yet, like send me a DM and I will send you the link, because that's something I didn't mention before, but in your DMs, when you send a link, those are hyperlinked. So you can click through links in your DMs. So that's a great place. One, you're getting people chatting with you, they become a lead, they're like in a private message with you, and you're able to send them links. So I think that's more beneficial. I wouldn't stress about getting to a certain number of followers. I'd feel more comfortable having a bunch of real followers. Great. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much for participating, asking questions, all of those things. I will share the replay. I will share this PowerPoint. And I'd love for you to reach out to me on Instagram via direct message. Let me know you watched. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. And I'm excited to connect with everyone. Thanks again for watching. Thank you. I'll see you soon.